Having built hundreds of vans over the last 20 years or so, we've made enough mistakes ourselves to learn from them. We also see all the mistakes that everybody else makes when they bring them to us. In this video, we're going to cover the most popular ones. We're going to break them down into categories of base vehicle, gas, electric, water and finishing touches. So you can either skip to the one that's most relevant to your build just now, or you can watch the whole thing to avoid turning your dream van into an absolute nightmare. Let's get into it. So before you even touch the tools on a conversion, you want to make sure you're starting with a good base model van. A lot of people, when they're building into a second-hand van, they'll want to take somebody who's competent, that can come and look at the structure of the van and the integrity of it. You want to get underneath the chassis, you want to get in behind the wheel arches, you want to check the sills for any sort of kind of rust. Sometimes a little bit of surface rust is all right, it can be easily dealt with, but really you want to poke around and make sure that there's not any hidden problems that are going to cost you a lot of money in the long run. Quite often when we used to work on classic vans, you'd spend more time fixing up the van than you would actually building the conversion, and that's just wasted time and wasted money. Personally, as a company, we put in north of 40 grand's worth of parts into each conversion, into the bigger vans. If you're going to be investing that kind of money into your future van, you want to know that the resale's there if you need to sell the van. Most people go into these kind of things thinking, oh, we're going to keep this van for the rest of our life. In reality, most people, we think, keep a van 2 to 3 years before selling it and swapping something different. And you can also have a change of circumstances and need to sell it. You don't want to be left in negative equity because you put so much money into the conversion, but nobody's spending that kind of money on an older van. We don't build our conversions into anything that's over 3 years old. We like to keep it within factory warranty, purely because of the amount of money that we're putting into them. If you're buying a van personally for you to use, you can afford to spend a wee bit more on the conversion, and you can afford to put it into an older van if you're going to give it the love and care it needs. But it's a good idea to know what you're starting with before you commit to the purchase. Something that can come back to really bite you once you've finished a conversion is if you've not primered the edges. So these edges will now get primed once they've been cut. They've been cut and then we've used a flap disc to smooth them down. Then we'll hit them with a wee bit of primer. We use a Sikaflex primer. You can also use like a Hammerite paint, anything that's going to seal the edge and stop this bare metal from turning to rust later on down the line. Something else to consider as well is that when you're grinding, especially with using a flap disc, you're going to get really fine steel powder, little filings that are going to go everywhere. They will go into everything. So especially on the outside of the van, you want to tape up any sort of joins like we've done down here, any kind of door creases, anywhere that could trap metal filings or metal dust, because it will sit in those grooves. You might not notice it at the time, but then once it's been outside in the rain for a few days, they'll turn orange and start to put rust leaks down the side of your van. Without a doubt, the most common mistake that we see people making is not primering the windows properly. You want to put your primer onto the paintwork here, and then you also want to prime the glass as well. You need to do both, because the sealant that you use for the window bonding, it will stick to the window and it will stick to the paint, but not well, and over time it peels off. Especially with you slamming the doors, you've got a confined space, it's a pocket of air, and if you slam the door, it's compressing that air, so it ends up popping the window, and over time it puts pressure and pressure and pressure on it. The right primer will etch into the paintwork and it will also etch onto the glass, and so it won't allow it to pull away. Unless that's on there, over time you're going to have that window pop off. So when we're carpeting the inside of a window aperture, we'll actually fold the carpet over and stick it onto the outside. We usually leave 5 to 10 mil on here, depending on the amount of size that we've got left for our primer and window bonding. In this case, this one will be cut back slightly further. We then go around and we clean off any excess spray glue, because if you leave the overspray on here and then put your primer onto it, it means your primer's sticking onto your spray glue. It's not sticking onto the paint. So you want to make sure that your paint is contaminant free. You want to just get some rubbing alcohol or panel wipe and just take off any excess overspray, any other contaminants that are on the window, especially if it's an older van you're fitting them to. It will have lots of road dirt, it could have dust on there. You want to make sure there's a nice clean surface. You can also maybe use a little bit of sandpaper just as an abrasive, just to key it up a wee bit. But then anything that you key, just make sure you put primer on before you put on your window bonding. Electrics is a key part in any build. It's often one that people leave to the end. They tend to line their van out, insulate it, soundproof it, get it all lined, and then they start to think about their furniture. Once the furniture's in, they then think, oh, I'm going to need to get power to everything. Now we'll run our cables. That's why you end up seeing everybody's cables inside their conversions. We tend to put everything inside the panel work of the van. We do removable panels, so that if you want to retrofit anything, you can just peel it back and get into them. But it means that when you're putting things into cupboards, you're not bashing the electrics all the time. You're not snagging snagging anything and pulling it out. And it just avoids problems in the future. The biggest mistake people make with electrics is choosing the wrong gauge of wire. So they wire in the fridge with a 2.5mm cable and they run it over 3 meters of length. What happens with that is your fridge will turn on, you will get power to it and you think, oh great, done the job properly, everything's working. But then you run your fridge for any sort of length of time, the heat builds up in the cable because it's not the right thickness and it can set fire and cause all sorts of problems to your camper van. You'll see here we've got all sorts of different gauge of cable. Automotive cable is different from household cable. Something we quite often see when people bring their vans into is people have used single core household cable designed for 240 volts. In a house your cables are run and then they never move. In a camper van they're bending round corners, they're flexing, they're moving all the time with the van. So you're going to have multi-core strands of cable within automotive wiring. So you want to make sure you've got the right kind of cable, you want to make sure you've got the right gauge of wire to use. We tend to use lots of different coloured wires so that when we're running it through our trunking we can see which wire is which when it gets to from one end of the van to the other. We keep it in the trunking to keep it neat, but it also keeps it isolated, keeps it separate from the bodywork of the van so you're not going to get any rub, you're not going to tear away any of the sheathing when you're pulling it through. It just keeps it nice and safe. With newer vehicles, electric systems that they've got, they're a lot more complicated than older vehicles. It used to be you could just take the sheathing off of a bit of wire, tap into it, wrap it round, a wee bit of solder if you're being fancy. Nowadays it's very much different. There's a lot of complicated electrical systems on board. If you tap into one of the cables here, the onboard computer will recognise that wire is now drawing more volts than it should be, and so it'll flag up a problem. But it doesn't come onto the computer and tell you, oh, it is this wire that's the problem. It will flag up as you have a problem with your wing mirrors, you have a problem with your heating, your air conditioning's not working. It'll give you multiple faults on the reader and it's really hard to diagnose. Whenever we're fitting anything and we're tapping onto the existing vehicle electrics, you want to run it through the fuse box. You want to make sure that it's isolated and take it off of a main feed, not off of anything else. A lot of products, when you buy them, they'll need to be coded into the computer. So when we fit a reversing camera, we don't just tap it into the reverse light to signal when the vehicle's reversing. We actually run it all the way back into the vehicle's electrics, and then we have the vehicle recoded so that it knows that there is a reversing camera in the system. These are what you'd probably call an entry-level electrical hookup for shore power. I mean, they will work. We take loads of these off vans and fit more kind of updated versions of them. The problem with them is that they get fitted usually underneath the back bumper, and what you find is that over time they fill it with water. They do have rubber seals and things at the back, but they let water ingress into them. They fill it with water and your copper cable that should be a nice bronze colour gets turned into black, crispy, corroded material, and it stops working after a while. There's no way of keeping the water out of them. I'd say avoid them at all costs. Gas is by far the most dangerous thing in your van to do yourself. It's something that quite often people think that they can do themselves because it's relatively simple to do. The thing is, it is very easy to do it wrong. What you need to have is the gas needs to be kept in a separate locker. We get loads of people bring their vans to us and they'll just have a gas bottle in the cupboard under the sink. There's no seal round about the door, there's no ventilation in it. So what happens if you have a gas leak from the bottle itself or from your appliance? If you've left it on, it's overnight, it's filling up that locker with gas, it's leaking out into the sleeping compartment. Gradually it builds up and builds up. Carbon monoxide is a real problem in small places like this, in canal boats and camper vans, motorhomes and caravans. Gas is heavier than air, and so you need to have a drop vent out of the bottom of your gas locker. You need to have a drop vent underneath any connection that you have. Some people just put the one in the locker and that's it, but where the gas connects onto your appliance, or if there's any joints anywhere else, if that gas leaks there, it needs to have access to a low point vent that it can drop out through the bottom of the van. It's advisable to have it in a lockable container like this, although you don't need to have it as long as you're not renting the vehicle out. As long as the container or cupboard that you have it in is fully sealed so that it can't come into the living compartment, and as long as it's vented, then you're all right. There's certain other regulations you need to have. You're allowed to have a rubberized pigtail, which then goes into the tap on the top of your bottle. You're not allowed to have a regulator on the top of your bottle, which you would see normally with your barbecue. You have to have what's called a bulkhead regulator, where it's actually attached onto the side of your gas box or onto the side of one of your units and it's fixed. And from that point, it then needs to be hard tubed going to your appliance. You can have as many joins in there as you'd like, but everything needs to be fitted properly, and then it needs to be certified by somebody who's gas registered. You cannot just do it yourself. If you build it yourself, that's fine for you to use. If you then let one of your friends borrow it or you rent it out, if the worst case happens, you're the one that will be prosecuted and you're the one that will go to jail for endangering somebody else's life. So you want to get that certified, and then you want to have it checked every year as part of an annual habitation check. Most homemade camper vans will come with internal water tanks, the like that you have to carry in, carry out. The problem with those is that they have submersible pumps inside them. Most people just drill a hole in the lid of the tank, drop their pump in, put some sort of strap around the bottle to stop it from moving. It's not sealed, so when you're driving around, that water's splashing around, you're going to get water coming out and going into your cupboards. Then when you're lifting the bottle in and out, you're going to get water leaking out, and it goes into your cupboards. It goes soaked up with the wood of your furniture board, and it ends up swelling, making a mess. You're never going to keep it nice and dry. It also takes up loads of valuable storage space in what's otherwise a very small space. We always fit underslung tanks, and it's something we'd always advise everybody to do. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You see with this one here, this is probably one of the biggest ones we do. This is a 180 litre water tank. This will go underneath the van, gives you so much more space inside. The beauty about this as well is if there's any leaks, it's outdoors. You can fix them and it's not damaged the rest of your van. So with an underslung tank, you're going to want to have a decent pump because you're going to be pumping the water from the tanks under the van into your habitation area and into your appliances. We would also recommend using bulkhead mounted pump. It gets fastened onto one of the walls inside your furniture. Sureflow do really good ones, Fiamma do really good ones. This will give you continuous flow from your taps. You get them in all sorts of different ratings. This is 45 PSI. Standard for a smaller camper van will be about 20 PSI. Bigger vans you're looking for 30 to 45 PSI. You then want to start looking at maybe an expansion tank, expansion chamber. This will then give you continuous pressure. So if you've got a shower in the vehicle, it will help with the flow of the water. You want to mount these reasonably close to each other. We'd always advise when you're fitting a pump like this that you fit a filter just before the water comes into the pump. That way if there's any swarf still in the tank or any dirt in your tank, it gets caught up by that filter before it goes into the pump itself. You can take these out and clean them, but it's a bit of a faff. But yeah, these are certainly better than submersible pumps and will certainly help you with your conversion. It means that if you wanted to add outdoor showers or anything like that extra later on down the line, this is give you the strength to do so. A really popular mistake that people make is when it comes to the finishing of their van is the carpet, the whole of the back doors and the sliding door. When I mean they cover the whole thing, they take it right up to the seals of the van. Now the water, when it rains, will just creep in the side there. It ends up taking the carpet off the glue. It all looks frilly on the end and just looks really badly unfinished. Just keep it nice, keep it neat. Only carpet the door cards themselves. Keep the paintwork of your van exposed. If you've got an older van and it's scratched and scraped, give it a wee paint before you do it and then carpet. Put your panels back on. Keep it neat, just keep it simple. One of the big mistakes people make in their van is using the wrong adhesive. People use stuff like this, no more nails, and silicone to fit things like fans and vents and windows into their van. This is meant just to seal. It's not meant to hold on. It's certainly not strong enough for a vehicle, and it doesn't work with primer. We've had people bring vans into us in the past where they said, oh, my skylight's leaking, my fans are leaking, my windows are leaking. And you give them a little shove and the whole thing pops off. It's because they've used silicone, bathroom silicone to fit stuff. It's not an adhesive, it's not going to work on your van. This stuff here will do the majority of work on your van. It's called polyurethane sealant or PU sealant. You get different grades of it and different strengths, and you need to use different primers depending on which one you use. So the best thing to do is check the instructions it comes with and go for the recommended primer. We use this for fitting things onto the metalwork of the van. We sometimes use it for filling holes in the van, so when we've removed roof racks and things, if there's still holes in there that want to be sealed up, we'll use that. We'll use it sometimes for fitting glands when you're putting solar cables and things into the van. This here is a window bonding adhesive. You don't want to use polyurethane, a standard polyurethane for the window bonding. It needs to be a little bit more flexible than that. So always use a proper window bonding kit and again use the same primer. Now this stuff here, this is the one you want to use for stuff going into your roof. So for skylights, vents, max air fans, that sort of stuff, you want to use Elastomer. It stays very kind of mobile, you can still squeeze it, it doesn't dry up at all. This is like a putty, it will not let water in. It's excellent stuff. If you use polyurethane, you'll find that as the van flexes, as it moves along the road, it can pull the polyurethane away from what it's contacted onto, even with a primer, and you will get little hairline cracks which will let water in. This stuff here is the ticket. So there you go guys, some of the most common mistakes that we see in the game. Whether you're just dreaming and designing your camper, whether you're partway through the build, just remember, take your time, slow down, do it properly from the start. When in doubt, ask for the help. If you liked this video, if you like what you see, give us a like and a subscribe. And as always, new videos out each Friday.